Hi guys, this is a podcast Innovating Humanity, when we are trying to look from different angles of current situations. So as the old saying goes, we cannot change anything unless we think differently from different angles. And I have wonderful guest today, my good friend Jon Howard from London, Hampstead Heath, so to speak. And nice to have you here.
Nice to be here.
And Jon, let's dive straight into it. You have been working from historical point of view through archaeology as a marketing expert, worked with the biggest brands in the world, and you are a damn good teacher, damn good trainer. I have been working with you for some occasions, and you're really just excellent trainer. And what I wanted to talk about to you today in terms of innovating or changing humanity is irrationality aspect of that. So irrationality as as a great potential. What we feel by our gut feeling, what we feel by our sixth sense or seventh sense whatsoever, and in the very sense that irrationality is kind of one of the stumbling blocks, because we can be manipulated by others, by ourselves. What is your concept of irrationality, and in what state of irrationality our society right now is? Sorry for such a broad topic, but what comes to your mind and the top of your head?
Well, our behavior is very rational. As long as we understand it as a response to different kinds of stimuli and an attempt at constantly achieving a state of stimulus balance. So we want to be optimally stimulated all the time. In other words, if there's too much stuff going on in the environment, we'll damp our response, we'll mute our response to it, as if we're turning down the volume control in our own head. If there's not enough stimulation coming from our environment, then we'll amplify our response to it, we'll exaggerate our response to it. So all behavior is rational if we look at it as being that. If we try to understand it on the basis of some kind of rational explanation that somebody gives for their behavior, then it's not rational. Because there are so many things that you do, impulse purchases, so many things that we do that are not rational if we look at them on the surface. Completely rational if we look at them subjectively in that moment of time. Now, you asked, have we become more irrational? You asked something like that. Have we become more irrational today?
I suppose maybe the biggest topic is what irrationality does with us. So, for example, we as a humanity, I would say we are not in a high. We don't have good moment in history at this very moment.
Yeah,
My feeling is like that.
Yeah. So we've got far more information available to us today than we've ever had before. Far more knowledge available to us instantly, and we want less. We want more stimulation, less actual proper insight. And that's quite an extreme situation, because never before have we had so much information available and wanted so little. So when you see people's reactions politically, and not just things like Twitter, people say Twitter's not real life. Yes, it is. It is real life, because there's real people on Twitter getting angry and triggered and upset about real life issues. And it's just sort of the tip of the iceberg. When we see how people react in conversation, in any kind of situation, to big issues and big subjects, we've become more irrational, more emotional, more impulsive, more angry, more quick to an emotional reaction than before. So we're becoming less and less rational, even though we've got more ability to become more rational in our behavior. Again, though, if we go back to the original definition, all the behavior, being triggered by things and screaming and shouting at people, where 10 years ago you'd just say, that's an interesting point, I disagree, and now you'll scream at them. That's also rational. If we look at it if we look at each individual link in the behavioral chain, it's all completely rational in its own context. It makes perfect sense, because we're emotional, social, tribal animals. We haven't all got PhDs in logic.
So we can say that there always will be reason. There is always reason, right? In a sense. The question is, maybe we could kind of define rational, irrational in two aspects, but why it is important. So irrationality could kill humanity, in a sense.
Yeah.
And irrationality, in a sense, mixed together with rationality, it can save it.
Too much rationality can also kill humanity.
Yeah, so this is the topic about balance. So there is intuition, and then there is information, right? And just I want to stick this into this, that stress actually equals information, amount of information, and what kind of information. So what you said, that too much information, it's too much stress. So we're just kind of trying to level it out, right?
Yeah. And we have a lot of the time we have unhealthy ways of leveling it out. The thing with stress is that this
alcohol as a leveling out, just to dumb it down also down,
or any of the behaviors. If we get into the fight or flight response where we feel hunted and we have to run away, we can't think creatively. It's not possible neurologically to have new ideas when you're in that state.
Absolutely.
Because if you're running away from a bear in the forest, you don't want to start writing poetry. It's the only thing that we're able to do.
Bear is coming and approaching me, and thy moment is so wonderfully.
It's going to be a very short poem. The bear is... So So the only thing we can do in those situations is repeat the behavior that worked last time we felt like that. So any kind of creative response is just off the table when we're feeling stressed, in the sense of kind of feeling hunted. And there are many ways that we feel hunted. We don't actually have to be chased through a forest to feel hunted, because humans are such symbolic creatures. We're so good at creating patterns and symbols in our minds. In fact, the brain's primarily a pattern-making organ. So when somebody is chasing you for a work deadline, you feel like you're being chased through the forest by a bear. And your central nervous system will react in the same way and shut down your ability to think creatively. So the big challenge for everybody is mental and emotional discipline. The more mental and emotional discipline we have as individuals, the better we can react to things, the less impulsively we can react to things, the better we can assess the kind of information that people are trying to sell us.
Listen, you said about these patterns and images. So actually we are coming to subconscious mind. So actually we are coming, as I understand, it's the topic about the cause. So there's this big part of our consciousness, subconscious mind. By the way, in Tao, tradition of Tao, there is no subconscious. So it's like a Western culture created this concept of something unknown. And actually, it's really good that it's created that we need to understand, kind of to name it. Yes, I don't know this, 95% of my inner thoughts and feelings. And when you said about these patterns, so there are patterns, how it can be guided. So this is why I started I named my subconscious course as subconscious language. We need to learn subconscious language. So in these terms, maybe this is the topic. When we want to kind of improve humanity, we need to understand this. 95% of every person is unguided, unchecked for. So imagine 8 billion people, right? 95% of each of them is unchecked. So the question about rationality, irrationality is kind of, we need to start to kind of understand how we speak with ourselves, how we pattern ourselves.
Yeah. And a lot of that comes from our environment, and we don't have any control over that. When we're really young, we just soak up all the influences from our environment like a sponge. We don't have any sort of intellectual or spiritual or emotional filters for it. We just take it all in. So somebody who's brought up in London is going to have a very different experience of the world from someone who's brought up in Calcutta. Both of them completely understandable and rational and logical in the context of their environment. When you put those two people together then as adults, they're going to be communicating in different ways. They're going to have different emotional reactions to the same intellectual stimuli. They're going to react differently towards things, which can cause problems. It can also be very, very good on a working team. The more diversity you have in terms of people's nationalities and cultures, and also the more diversity you have in terms of people's educational backgrounds, the more likely you are to be able to solve problems in interesting ways.
So, for example, if you would say, okay, let's try to be smarter about this communication with our subconscious, because when we are irrational, then we can do really silly things. And especially when we are politicians, we can do silly things. And it's huge responsibility, right? Huge impact on media guys, celebrities, and all that stuff. So from what angle you would approach this problem? What would be your strategy first step?
Which problem?
How to improve human being ability to understand where they are, to reason things honestly and as objectively as possible. So, for example, if we are in this mess in some sense, climate change, energetical sense, democracy actually crisis, I suppose, a lot of countries, right? So there are, what I understand, a lot of reasoning comes from irrationality. We cannot analyze stuff. We are kind of tribe who has lost every parameter of quality of relationships and all that stuff.
Yeah, and a lot of that's because the definitions of things like quality have changed over time. We spent thousands of years trying to run away from our tribal nature. trying to be something bigger, something more than we were when we lived in the forest. And actually what I find really interesting about all these amazing technologies that we've managed to create over the last few thousand years is that actually all of them are just helping us to go back to our natural tribal state and to mimic the social patterns of our ancestors. So much technology is about communication, about replicating the physical presence of the other person in the room with you, video conferencing, things like that. And we try to be more than human, and yet all of our technology just helps us be human. And it shows us that technology is about people, not about things, and people are about each other. So the best technologies are the technologies that allow people to enjoy each other, which is why you can have friendships with people in Sydney, which 20 years ago you couldn't really. I remember my parents they had friends who lived in the Soviet Union. They used to have to book a phone call to Moscow, like a week in advance, and the phone lines would often be cut off. And it was a really big deal, staying in touch with people. Now, you couldn't make friends in the virtual world. There was no virtual world. You had to, if my parents didn't know these Russians, they wouldn't have any reason to call them. You have to physically go out and meet people in that world. And technology has made the world so much more connected, so in theory, we can meet anyone, anytime, thanks to technology, which is wonderful. But at the same time, we are quite simple animals. And so what we've done is we've created technologies that we can't really handle. My old mentor, Desmond Morris, he put it brilliantly. He said, we've stitched together a fabulous cloak of civilization, but it's a clumsy garment and we keep tripping up over it because our primate nature isn't really compatible with the world that our intellectual work has created for us. We can't actually handle the world that we've built. So we're constantly trying to catch up with the stuff that we've built. Our nature as animals doesn't match the thing that we've created for ourselves. We've created a world that's not for us. It's for robots. It's for half humans, half robots, not for real humans. So we're very unhappy.
What would be next step? What would be your suggestion how to get to more balanced way?
I think it's going in that direction already. The pendulum has to swing too far in a particular direction, then it gets pushed further back in the other direction, which is also too far. And eventually, you find a happy middle.
What are the signs that we are kind of going, after some while we are going towards good direction?
Changes in attitudes towards things that become less extreme.
For example?
I don't want to go there.
one small bite.
No. No, there are various hot trigger subjects that get people very upset. And what happens is that the bullies get really upset and they scream and shout. The rest of society gets intimidated, and we start to comply with the rules that the bullies have established. And then there's some pushback. And the first people to push back get really badly demonized and crucified. And then more people say, well, no, hang on, that's not reasonable, that's not fair, that's not right. And then it sort of slowly starts to balance out. The trans thing at the moment there's some pushback now. A small number of the trans people, mainly male to female trans who hadn't actually transitioned, were really vocal, really quite violent, extremely aggressive, and intimidated almost everybody. And now there's a backlash. People have realized that that's a very small minority. They're not actually sincere. And they're messing things up for people who are sincere and for everybody else. And it took a while. There was a lot of intimidation. A lot of people got cancelled. A lot of careers got ruined. J.K. Rowling is kind of immune because she's a billionaire and she's got private security and she's already achieved what she wants to achieve in life. But people who need their jobs, they're in real trouble because one tweet, which 10 years ago would have been considered normal and acceptable and nobody would even notice it, now it blows up and then 2 weeks later they get a brick through their front window. And that's completely unacceptable. It's completely irrational. It's entirely rational if you enter the mind of the people who are throwing the bricks. It's entirely rational if you look at it in that context. If you look at the broader context, it's completely unacceptable behavior in a supposedly civilized society where all this talk of minority rights and things is about protecting vulnerable people and preventing bullying. protecting people who are different from the mainstream, stopping them from being marginalized or bullied or cut out by the mainstream. That's fantastic. That's great. Well, then when it goes too far and it becomes a small number of very, very angry, very disturbed people basically trying to bully everybody else, trying to bully the mainstream, then we have a problem. And there are no real legal mechanisms for dealing with something like this, which is why the legal system is quite confused. And so the only way we can deal with it is to go back to the old rules of the tribe in the jungle, which is things like gossip. Gossip is an incredibly important tribal function. It's a way of regulating the tribe's values, what sort of behaviors they find acceptable and what they don't find acceptable. That's all dealt with gossip. You either need a central justice system where you both argue your case with the chief or with the council and they decide, or if you don't want to take it to that level, or if you don't have a centralized justice system that can deal with these disputes, then gossip deals with it. The tribe naturally and spontaneously regulates what's acceptable and what's not, and it's a really powerful function. So that's, and a lot of that is enabled by social media in the modern world. And that's about sort of mass grassroots campaigns developing and growing, semi-organized. It's something that we should probably try to rely on each other and the natural tribal ways of gossip to resolve rather than anything legal. Because as soon as you start using legal instruments to regulate the way people talk and the way people treat each other spontaneously, then you get into massive trouble.
Actually, I thought about this tribal thing that gossip regulates values, and maybe I can say that gossip regulates tensions. It kind of levels tensions out, because it's kind of hard to imagine gossip is like, look, she's looking so wonderful, right? So when there is good stuff going on, it's like nothing to gossip about, so to speak. It's kind of release of tension, release of stress in some sense, right?
Yeah. Oh well. Yeah. First, there's a difference between what men tend to gossip about and what women tend to gossip about. Also, we'll gossip about good things. We'll gossip about something amazing that somebody did.
It's like gossip. It's like whisper gossip. It's like chat. Because I just both.
It's spontaneous information sharing about the behavior of the group. What women will often gossip about is behavior of people in relationships. Men will also often gossip about things, especially things that go bang, or big things that are breakable, things that are loud, or things that somebody did or achieved. Whereas female gossip is often about conversations, behavior in relationships. And it's what we would consider quite trivial, although it's not necessarily trivial. We'll gossip about something, about war. Did you hear about this new tank that the Americans have got? Oh, it goes bang, it's big and it's loud. And we get very excited about that. Women don't
I cannot imagine myself in such a conversation. Sorry. It's not... Okay, sorry.
Cars and football.
Well, thank you.
Okay?
That's better.
I'm not into either cars or football. Guys are into cars and football.
Me. Okay, yeah.
And cars are, cars. It's basically a horse, right? It's a mechanical horse, and it goes fast and it's dangerous and it's very exciting. And football is hunting, it's tribal hunting. It's hunting and warfare. So of course we're very drawn to it. And seeing a bull go into a goal is like seeing an arrow going into a gazelle's neck or something. It's desperately exciting. And it's seeing your tribe winning in a stylized hunt against the other tribe. Fantastic, what's not to like? So while guys are watching football, women will be gossiping about what their friends did last night. And the gossiping about what their friends did last night is a very, very effective way to say, I wouldn't do that, would you? No, we wouldn't do that, would we? She did. Or alternatively, did you hear what she did? Absolutely amazing. Oh my God. And they get very excited about it. And what they're actually doing is they're reinforcing that behavior as something that they in their group ought to be doing. So it's a really effective way of shaping the kinds of behaviors that we expect from each other.
Mm-hmm. So, and in this sense, I just think about humanity as we have become those bubbles. So this is new kind of tribe, right? So this is not a tribe of place with different diverse people. But usually tribe has been diverse in a sense, right? Right now we are not diverse, we are in the bubble. So it becomes like a new kind of tribe, right?
It's a mosaic of tribes, whereas it wasn't before. People talk about multiculturalism, and Britain, for example, has become less multicultural in the sense of what multiculturalism is meant to mean. It's meant to be soup rather than a salad. Right? A salad you can pick out all of the ingredients separately. A soup you can't.
Wow, nice analogy.
It's all
Right,
blended in.
yeah.
So in a society like Britain, we're very proud. We're multicultural, isn't that wonderful? Supposedly, it means that a Jamaican Rastafarian, an Indian Hindu, a Pakistani Muslim, they all kind of go to school together and they all do business together and they all love each other and they all live in the same street and it's all fantastic. The reality is that we've become sort of ghettoized. We've
Chinatown and all this.
yeah, we've heard. Well, Chinatown's it's much more recent even. Chinatown's almost a cultural icon. You know, it's almost like Buckingham Palace for tourists. What we've had is we've become voluntarily ghettoized. We've herded ourselves into different cultural ghettos. So Britain now, you can go to the Turkish part of North London. You can go to the Czech part of North London. You can go to the Jewish part of North London. You won't find many Pakistanis in the Jewish part of North London. You won't find many Jews in the Turkish part of North London. So we've got these kind of voluntary ghettos. So it's much more a mosaic, much more a salad than a soup. You can remove the ingredients and they'll still be culturally homogenous in their own context.
So this is a wonderful analogy that soup is kind of, there's this diffusion, right? There is this becoming
Osmosis,
each other. Yeah, absolutely. And then we come again to this topic of creating of Facebook and all these social media, and this impact, maybe it is so immense that we kind of just cannot fathom it, right? What's happening with us as a society.
Yeah.
Because, for example, there is one principle. I received that I'm trying to read different kind of attitudes. And one guy wrote me on social network that, listen, don't follow that guy because that guy is bad guy. And I answered to him, listen, I need to understand his or her perspective. And the very same for Twitter, for Facebook, not so much for Instagram, but kind of just to check it out, different point of views, and just to understand the world, diversity of it. But people are kind of homogenized. We are becoming like really like that.
In some ways, there are lots of ways we're becoming that. I heard people all over the world are complaining that Airbnb apartments all look the same. You can go to an Airbnb apartment in Hong Kong or in Tierra del Fuego, and they'll look identical.
It's like Hilton, yeah, of course, Hilton, but it's Airbnb.
Hiltons are more diverse architecturally than Airbnb flats. It's a complaint that people have. There's another homogeneity which I really dislike, which is the way we think, our inability to think deeply. One of the most important things we need to teach at school is how to think, as early, as young as possible. People don't know how to think, they think in loops. And you can't break them out of the loop. And a loop is like a kind of a trance. The nature of a trance is you don't know you're in it. And you can't break someone out of a trance with logic. You can't tell them, listen, you're in a trance, break out of it. You have to enter the trance and get them out of it in different ways. There are various ways of doing it. You can't sit there and argue with them. They'll just go deeper into their trance, especially if your tone of voice is reminding them of parents or someone who traumatized them years and years back, and they just have this trance-like response. You throw them into an old pattern, and they respond from inside that pattern. And when you talk to people about politics, about economics, about anything more complicated than a bus timetable, they start thinking in loops, and they start reacting emotionally and impulsively to things that they shouldn't be reacting impulsively to, because it's just logic. There's this old saying, facts don't care about your feelings. The first time I heard it, I cracked up laughing because it's so beautifully true. And now I've heard it so often that it's almost boring. And it's a shame that it needs to be repeated so often. There's this whole mentality out there at the moment that people have some kind of legal right to not be offended. And then at the same time as telling you that you've just been offending them, and they have a moral right, a human right to not be offended, they'll scream and shout at you and yell at you and call you all kinds of names. They'll call you a fascist and a Nazi, and every nasty name they can think of. Absolutely letting go at you, just completely, like, a machine gun in your face, verbally. And all because you don't respect them. It's ridiculous. What gives them the right to scream and shout at somebody for apparently not respecting them? It's completely hypocritical, and that's the way people think. This very, very spoiled and emotionally spoiled and entitled, not necessarily materially. And then people bring their kind of frailty and their fragility and their inflammability, that they can burst into flames any second. They bring that to a conversation. They bring that to a cafe. They bring that to a pub. They bring that to a meeting room. And so you're walking through a minefield. Only they know where the mines are. And there's nothing they love more than when you step on one. They love blowing up. It's a pleasure for them.
Listen, then the topic about humanity is, in a sense, about returning to tribal aspect of it, to return to our natural state of soupness, so to speak, right? Kind of that. And again, I talked with Mr. Ilves, Estonian president, former, and wonderful intellectual, wonderful guy. And I just asked him about irrationality. Does he think that people are irrational? And my feeling was that he will instantly say yes, 100%. And he was considering that for a while, and he kind of gave ambiguous answer to that. But my feeling from what we talked about again is lack of critical thinking, is lack of ability to work with information about yourself, about your reality around you, and so there is no way of getting out of this unless we start to be able to work with critical thinking or informational flows and or this irrationality or subconscious mind.
Yes. If we can't process information properly, we can't make decisions. We can't react meaningfully to things.
We will make decisions. We will make decisions.
We can't make proper decisions. We can't make decent decisions. We react like little angry babies with a vocabulary.
Little angry babies with a vocabulary. Okay.
Yeah, it's very sad. But this tribal thing's interesting as well, because in the modern, in a normal tribe, it's homogenous in terms of culture. In other words, the ways that they're expected to behave towards each other are all known within the tribe. In the modern world, we live in a collection of tribes, a fragmented collection. Each and every one of us is a walking collection of tribes. You're a member of a whole bunch of different tribes, some official, some unofficial. Same with me. I'm a member of all sorts of tribes. And
family as a tribe, friends as a tribe, work colleagues as a tribe.
And then you get to nationality, you get to political views, what car you drive, whether you prefer McDonald's or Hesburger, whatever it is. All kinds of little things like that. In fact, I found when I was working in advertising, we did a study with the two leading brands of margarine in the UK, which is not a very high interest category, right? It's not a very emotional category. Stork and Flora are the two main competitors, like the Coke and Pepsi of margarine in Britain. And we asked Stork loyalists, describe Flora users. That was it. Just describe the kind of people who buy Flora. And they said they're bad mothers. They're very old-fashioned. Oh, no. They're bad mothers. They're too trendy for their own good, probably single mothers, probably don't know who the father is. Father's probably in jail. They're probably on drugs and completely unaware of current issues in children's health. Then we asked Flora users to describe Stork housewives, and they said they're old-fashioned. They probably hit their children. They don't understand anything about how to bring up kids, completely out of touch with modern, current trends in children's health.
It's so sad and funny in the same time.
It's sad and funny. And the amount of contempt that each group had for each other. And it's just margarine. It's one molecule away from being plastic.
That's so sad and funny. Man.
It's ridiculous. So we have these instant judgments about our own identity, our own tribe, and others. Now, that's okay if the only difference between two people living on the same street is one of them likes Stork and one of them likes Flora, and they still judge each other. If we come from different social or ethnic tribes and we have different rules of what's acceptable behavior and what's not, then we can have massive conflicts, because for one group of people, for example, being tolerant of other people's views is an honorable thing. It's considered to be a sign of strength, and it's a very honorable thing, noble thing in our society. That's what we do. We disagree in a friendly manner, in a respectful manner. We listen to the other person's point of view, and at the end, if we still disagree with them, then we agree to disagree, we go on our way, and we're still friends. In other cultures, that's massively shameful. It's a humiliation. It's a loss. It's weakness. You never back down. You must always be thumping your chest and always be winning. And any kind of material win is very good, and any kind of material loss is shameful. So you end up being acting in ways that in the West we consider incredibly immature and selfish and stupid and greedy and pathetic. And of course, in the West, we only give status to people for things that we find respectable and responsible and noble and decent. We don't give status to people for doing things that we find petty and greedy and pathetic and stupid. So we think competing for everything is petty and pathetic and stupid, and you're not going to get any status. In a different culture, they think you must compete for everything, otherwise you're weak and pathetic and you won't get any status. When these two cultures try to come together, you're bringing a tennis racket to a football match. And you're convinced it's a tennis racket. What's this huge ball doing here? Why are you kicking it? It's supposed to be a much smaller ball, and we hit it with our tennis rackets. And where's the net? And the other person's like, what the hell are you doing with a tennis racket? This is football. And you're both absolutely convinced that the other one doesn't know how to play the game. They do know how to play the game. They're just playing a different game from you. And that's the failure of what we call multiculturalism.
So, and what could be this uniting topic? What can unite? What can bridge people together?
Good question.
Tribal is this soupness of tribes. The soupness of tribes.
They've got to be a member of a group that they're proud to belong to. And it's got to be difficult to join that group and challenging. They have to make sacrifices to join that group. It's one of the secrets of tribalism that we get wrong in companies. The more difficult you make it to join a tribe, the more loyal people are once they've been accepted.
And this is kind of, I know this stuff and I hate this stuff. Really, because
biology.
Yeah, and this
Nothing
is kind of,
do about it.
It's kind of, I know these principles, but I'm too lazy kind of to make these obstacles. You create this game of entrance, right?
Yeah.
This is game of entrance or whatsoever. Listen, by the way, just on a side note, there were these studies about good negotiators. And there were 4 aspects that were measured, and the most important aspect to find a common ground was to find a common ground. What is common? What is common? What is common? What is common with us? In Manchester, there were these studies about how, for example, in Manchester, there goes on a street one guy with a Liverpool T-shirt. Liverpool Football Club, right? Manchester United versus Liverpool. It is 100 old, this rivalry, something like that. And so how people behave. So, for example, if in Manchester you see someone is falling down on the street without just a regular T-shirt, 80% helped. If one has a Liverpool T-shirt on, something like 15% helped. Something like that. And imagine, this is the story about this tribalism. Yeah. And it's sad and funny. Yes. It's tragicomic in a sense.
Yes.
Absolutely. Yeah. Okay, mate. Let's just a little bit switch the topic. We talked before this conversation with Ilmars, who is owner of this your agency. And we talked about these live events. So they help to create these live events for corporations, blah blah blah. And I have been on such a live events as a trainer, and I always said to Ilmars and his colleagues, this is crazy. So, for example, there is live event, and people just want to be happy and want to have fun, to do some sports, and
outrageous,
kind of that. Okay, sarcastic Monty Python guy. So, anyways, they asked me to give some lecture at that moment, and it's kind of really tough cookie. It's not the place, not the time. But Ilmars always says, listen, let's give something meaningful, people, to kind of that. And the thing is, what we started to talk before that actually live events could be really important aspect of future communication, because subconscious is involved, body is involved. So we are reading each other better. So the topic is, do people from cooperation understand how it works, and maybe they need to understand it more, because this is huge opportunity actually, right? These live events, and usually those live events are kind of one-sided, just sports and drinking, or we are just kind of a high status lecture and we are sitting with a straight face, something like that. But maybe we need kind of to be more smart about it and to mix those things together, kind of that.
Yeah. Okay, so there's two there's 2 aspects to these things. Any kind of conference or event, right? 2 aspects. There's social grooming, which is the spontaneous socializing, which is very important. And there's also the ceremonial or ritualistic group aspects of it.
So social grooming, could you expand a little bit on that?
Yeah, social grooming is just people being nice to each other, chatting. It's called social grooming. It's exactly the same as when chimpanzees pick fleas off each other's fur. Talking about the weather, saying, would you like a coffee? This is all just picking fleas off the other person's fur. It's social grooming. It's being nice to each other. giving each other little positive social strokes. No, it doesn't require meaningful conversation or great discoveries to be made.
It's kind of teaser for trust building.
Absolutely,
Yeah,
absolutely.
and it's super, super important in terms of everything what leads to trust is so super important.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
So that's one aspect of events. The other aspect is the ritualistic or ceremonial aspect. Now, there are two ways that a tribe bonds. The first is with the official, ceremonial, formal group stuff. The second is with the unofficial, informal, spontaneous, one-on-one stuff, the more intimate socializing. And you need both in an event. Now, what we usually get massively wrong in every event is the ceremonial ritual side of it. You don't go to an event to be lectured by someone as if you're in a conference room with a bunch of slides.
I'm going to give you an update on the latest developments in the industry over the last 12 months.
There's no point. You don't bring a whole bunch of people together in a massive conference room.
I'm going to give you an update.
You don't do that.
Sarcastic Englishman.
Utterly ignorant thing to do. So what you want is you want a mixture of hunting heroes from within your tribe, who you can honor and celebrate for their achievements. You need external shamans, people from outside of the tribe who are experts on something, who are not going, their status is not going to threaten anybody inside your tribe. So if it's a company event and you want some expert to come in, make sure they're not an expert on anything that's going to threaten anybody within your tribe. Then you want warnings and news from the outside world, and the warnings and news should usually be given by one of the elders from your tribe, one of the most senior people, because that raises their status. There's a cast of archetypal characters, from the elders, from the senior hunters, external shamans and things like that, and internal shamans as well. Anyone who has access to the spirit world, whatever that means in the context of your organization. So it could be the strategic analysts in a bank. They could be the shamans of the organization. And you might want a presentation from them. And if you do, you don't want numbers. You want some whistles and bells presentation. You want to make it, really exciting. And what these ceremonial type things do is they bond the tribe together in ways that nobody's really conscious or consciously aware of. They just understand that they like each other more by the end of it than they did before. A little bit like a football crowd. Desmond Morris did a study at Oxford United Football Club, and he planted microphones around the stadium. And he found out that these football fans who normally, they can't sing. I mean, you ask them to sing, they can't sing. You ask them to play a drum, they'll get it completely out of time. You ask them to march up and down like soldiers, they'll be dancing around looking ridiculous. However, when they're chanting their little football chants, they were only ever a maximum of 1/16 of a second out of time with each other, even on the other side of a stadium. So something kicks in the tribal mind, in the collective mind, and you get this rush of hormones. You can feel the goosebumps. It's an incredibly electric feeling. People at the Latvian Song Festival, you get that with these 30,000 singers, and suddenly your whole body is just electric, And there are all sorts of group events where you get that feeling. And in fact, there are group events where we just try to manufacture that feeling deliberately and specifically. Raves, the music in a rave it's almost like candy. With candy, they isolate the flavor and they add loads of sugar artificially. So you get this super stimulus compared to nature. It's massively stimulating, an enhancement of what nature is. And trance music and the kind of music you get at raves is an isolation and an exaggeration of the aspects of music that make us all goosebumpy. And there are even drugs that people have developed to replicate these feelings as well. And these feelings can be created by joining any kind of a tribal ritual. They can be, and they are created in tribal societies with masks and with all sorts of performances, ritualistic performances. And they're a really, really important part of bonding a tribe. Very few people understand how it works because very few people have actually studied it. But a rave and a football match and a shaman in a tribe in West Africa dancing with an animal mask on and some animal skins, dancing around the fire and invoking the spirit of a particular animal species to bring the energy to somebody for healing purposes or to the group or to purge or banish unwanted enemy from the group, unwanted energy from the group. They're the same activities. We don't realize it because they look so different. They seem so different. Going to the cinema and listening to a shaman telling what they call a medicine story around the fire, same thing, for the same purpose. We just don't realize it because the contexts appear to be so different. We're just going after the irrational tribal bond that is a wonderful feeling. It's an extremely pleasurable feeling for good reasons. I love how efficient and smart nature is like that, and how efficient evolution is. The things that feel good for us in nature are good for us. And the things that feel bad for us are bad for us. Hey, how do you like that? Crazy, right?
Just about 2 minutes ago, I thought about this. It's kind of sex, right? And hopefully for women that man knows what he's doing. For men, of course, it's kind of yeah. But the thing about tribalism, actually, it is that we feel alive, we feel connected, and this is kind of rush of oxytocin or whatsoever. But this is unique thing about this collectiveness. And when we talked about this innovating humanity, or going away from this segregation right now, from salad to soupness, that it is actually this feeling of being together. And there is this paradox that part of our subconscious mind, it's kind of abstracting it. And so it's like really interesting that we are in this, in the, I don't know, black and white fight of this, because there are a lot of guys, especially introverts or something like that. I don't want to meet other people, although actually you need meet other people, right? But maybe, just thinking about out loud, the topic is that when we don't know how to communicate, and we can escape communication, we are getting even more worse in communication. Actually, due to lack of this skill, we cannot get to this end result of being happy together with our tribe and going through tough times and going through difficult conversations, something like that. So the skill about communication, what I notice, I'm working, the basic skill what I'm right now working in comparison is communication, and one more communication. It's like in the relationships, the very same. If you cannot communicate stuff, it's kind of end of relationships. So, so communication as a skill, what we need kind of to get to this part of to being together with people.
Yeah, a lot of it's about internal communication. We need to communicate properly with ourselves. A lot of the reason why introverts don't like company, or appear not to like company, or quite selective about it, they don't want to have their energy sucked out of them, as if being bitten by a vampire.
Voting for that, yeah, that's my case. Yeah.
And they don't want to be judged.
That's perfectionism and
right. Now,
stage fear and something like that.
The individual has two ways of dealing with that. Either they avoid social situations, so they won't have their energy sucked out of them and they won't be judged. Or they might be judged for not showing up. Or they can figure out a resolution with their internal dialogue. So they can figure out how to protect themselves energetically, so their energy won't be sucked out of them. And they can figure out how to cope with the idea of being judged in a more robust way. So either they stop feeling judged, or they feel judged and they just don't care. That's it, pretty much. They either stop being judged, stop feeling judged, or they carry on being judged and stop caring.
We are coming right now again to this subconscious topic, right? Because inner dialogue, actually, this is like the question about subconscious. So we talked in London a while ago about our subconscious as this huge force in our lives. And what I understood, I have had these something like 3,000 lectures and learning seminars, but I have been working as a lecturer. What I understand all the time that when we work just with the mental aspect of it. So, for example, there is this trainer, and I have this, presentation, and let's, in this crisis situation, do this stuff, for example. And it doesn't work like that, because we need to communicate with subconscious. Because if mind does one thing, subconscious, I don't care,
Yeah.
I need, I'm starting to speak voices as well. I don't care, I want to do this or that. That's my subconscious voice, kind of that, So the topic is, again, and how do you think, is it possible kind of to teach subconscious language, let's call it like that, to kids, to people, to young parents or something like that?
Absolutely it is. It's possible for them to learn it. Whether it's possible for us to teach it is a different question. It's definitely possible for them to learn it. We just need to figure out how to teach it properly.
So, anyways, I started to kind of I came out of closet, right? Right now, because I'm practicing these methods for 15 years, and now I just saw how it helps people. So I just understood that listen, we just need to go full in and just to give and continue to improve this methodology, just to give it to people. The question right now would be like, is society ready for that?
It needs it, so it better be ready for it.
So, or maybe I can rephrase the question: are we ready to tell it properly? So, because it's all about storytelling, about marketing in a sense.
So are you?
I'm growing in that sense.
Good. Well, there's your answer.
Thank you. Okay, done. Wonderful. Whew. This was good conversation. Really nice. Really nice. Thank
Now,
you.
there's something interesting about the subconscious that I noticed when I was feeling a bit cold the other day. Which is that it's a bit like temperature. There are lots of there's a big range of temperature, okay? Range from minus whatever to plus whatever, okay? Massively hot, massively cold. We can measure these, we can create them with you can boil water in a kettle, whatever. And we can measure these temperatures with all the technologies that we've got. However, there's actually a very narrow range of temperatures that human beings can live in. And I see consciousness as being quite similar. There's a massive spectrum of consciousness. What we think of as normal waking conscious awareness is actually a very, very small range within that spectrum. And all of our thinking takes place within that little range. So much of our experience of the world actually comes from outside of that range. It's filtered through the conscious stuff. All of our academia, all of our scientific research comes from that tiny, tiny, narrow range of conscious awareness. To the point that scientists actually get quite aggressive when you try to explore anything outside of it. And if you talk to scientists about telepathy, for example, if you talk to them about experiments they've done where the meditators send thoughts of love towards the waves on an ocean, on a beach, and they record it, and then they play it back to volunteers, and the volunteers can tell the difference between which recording was taken when the meditators were sending loving thoughts to the sea and which was taken when they were sending hateful thoughts to the sea. And they can tell the difference on an old-fashioned cassette tape. Things like that. And if you talk to a physicist about that, they'll get really angry. Oh, that's rubbish, pseudoscience, nonsense, hocus pocus, gypsy, Rose Lee, fortune-telling nonsense. They get really, really aggressive, irrationally aggressive. That's not a scientific response. That's an angry, emotional response. They feel like their territory is being invaded by weirdos. When actually, it's really, really important to explore these different levels of potential consciousness, because that's where so many of our solutions in the future are going to come from.
I couldn't agree more. And there actually, we come to this topic about uniting these two, let's call them fronts, so metaphysical and physical. And actually, my feeling is that this fight between church and science, it kind of goes on. It's kind of fight of tribes, in a sense. And the question again is, who are those people who are uniting them, right?
Yeah. Well, I don't know who they are. They're probably not very nice people.
Who are uniting them?
Probably. Well, usually it's not very nice people who are best organized to exploit weakness and exploit conflict.
No, but I mean, my feeling is, so for example, could you say what would be your examples, role models for those who can unite those two fronts? Unite. So metaphysical world and physical world.
Anything Jungian is very good from that point of view. Very good from that point of view. Jung was all about symbolism and how symbolism and mythology works in the unconscious.
But it's kind of, he's dead for something like 3 or 2 years already, right? He's like...
A bit longer.
Okay, 5 years, okay. So do we have nowadays some role models, role guys? So for example, Bill Nye, the science guy. Okay, he tells about science. And then there's Mike deGrasse Tyson, he tells about science. Who are those people? I don't know. Sadhguru, for example, who is actually for the metaphysical part of society. He's like really good teller about, and he's kind of really honoring science and all that stuff. So do we know, for example, in Europe, in the United States, who are those guys?
Jordan Peterson's very good on mythology and psychology. Very good on that.
By the way, he talks a lot about subconscious stuff, actually.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm not massively keen on his stuff about politics or anything like that, but if he sticks to his territory that he's good at, if he sticks to psychology and mythology, I think he's absolutely fantastic. Really, really insightful. And mythology has always been one of the ways of expressing the traffic of the subconscious in ways that the conscious mind can sort of understand.
It kind of structurizes subconscious in these patterns and these symbols. Yeah.
Stories have been proven to be the most efficient way of remembering complicated information. You can put so much, you can encode so much data into a story, which is like a zip file almost. So much information that you can remember in the story format that you can't. If I try to give you a list of people, of names that you should remember, a list of places where they come from, their ages, all sorts of things like that, and I ask you to memorize it. I say you've got half an hour to memorize it, or you've got 1 hour. I'll be generous, you've got 1 hour to memorize it. And I come back at the end, you won't remember a thing. Or you'll try and remember it alphabetically, or just some.
Could you please repeat my response? What was like? Okay, thank you.
Something like that.
Thank you.
Approximately.
For that. Okay, thank you.
Now, if I show you the first episode of Game of Thrones, you can remember the names of the characters. You can remember what their relationships were, where they came from, all of that stuff, because it's encoded in the format of the story.
Do you recall, I'm not a huge fan of Game of Thrones, but there was this wonderful expression from, what was the little guy called?
Tyrion.
Nothing beats good story.
Oh,
that was wonderful. That was wonderful. Nothing beats good story.
Yeah,
And
right.
by the way, this is the concept that I told usually for everyone in my lectures, that when you want to memorize something, you need to put emotions to that.
Yeah.
So story does that.
Yeah.
So therefore, ladies have a better memory than guys because they are attaching more emotions to that.
Interesting.
Hippocampus is in the emotional part of the brain. So not so kind of not so complex.
That makes sense.
Yeah, kind of that. Yeah, absolutely.
Nice.
By the way, I just understood that I kind of missed out of one aspect when we talked about this cultural events and companies' live events. That we talked with you about these 3 Ps, what tribe needs from leaders: provide, protect, and perform. And so in that sense, context changes, shapes changes, forms changes, but always you need to have these 3 elements, right? And when you have these 3 elements, so people feel fulfilled and protected, and there is this whole range of emotions that are kind of given to.
Yeah, it's about how people get status and esteem, how people become more socially dominant in a tribal group. You don't have to do all 3 of them. If you can do any one of them. If you protect the tribe, you're going to be given some status. If you provide for them, you're going to be given some status. And if you perform for them, you're going to be given some status. And it's always specific to what the tribe considers valuable. So performing is about performing things, replicating hunting skills that the tribe knows are necessary. If you're in a tribe where you're next to a fast-moving river and swimming skills are really important, there aren't many trees around, you don't need to climb high trees, then climbing high is not an impressive performance for that tribe. Swimming really strongly in a fast river, that's a very impressive performance for the tribe. You'll get status for that because it matches one of the skills that the tribe knows is needed for them to survive. So every tribe's got their own priorities of what skills are most valuable, and their competitive life of the tribe usually revolves around those skills. In the modern world, we don't know what the skills are that are necessary for survival. We don't know whether we should climb a high tree or shoot an arrow straight or swim a fast-moving river. So in the urban world, it's usually the way we raise our status is usually to try to be intellectually dominant and prove other people wrong and put them down and all of that stuff, which is horrible behavior. And it's completely unproductive and uncreative. It doesn't help you discover anything. It doesn't help you solve any problems. It's just a cheap and pointless way for people to try to prove, to try to win imaginary trophies from each other. So just have a shelf in your house with all of your imaginary trophies on the wall. And everybody who visits you, come and see my imaginary trophies. I won this one for interrupting somebody in a bar on Tuesday. That was, oh, you should have been there. That was a cracker. This one I won for ignoring my sister when she was trying to explain something to me. These are all my imaginary trophies, and I'm very proud of them. In fact, I'm going to wear them as medals.
That would be nice. That would be
yeah.
That would be so cool. That would be so cool. It's like provocative therapy.
Yeah.
That was like that.
Yeah. Just get loads of medals, one for every argument you've won.
Listen, regarding tribe, shouldn't we have leaders, but leaders what we kind of aspire to? So what happens when kid doesn't have some kind of role model in life? It kind of the kid grows up messed up. When tribe doesn't have leader, so tribe is messed up. And so
Totally.
when we are trying kind of to figure out this horizontal way of thinking and being, it's kind of, in some sense, I suppose there can be some super highly spiritually, intellectually developed tribe where that is possible. But I suppose 99% of society in this humanity as we are right now, we need this kind of leader role, because leader has obligations. Leader, this is specific function, right? I'm not right now caring about energetic crisis in Latvia because some leaders are doing that, right? So we need those leaders, and when we don't have people who perform, provide, and protect, so we kind of are getting lost, and we are because of that, we are getting destructive.
Yeah, totally. It's exactly the same with kids and parents as with people in an organization or a country, if they're poorly led. Most companies see the group as being a machine, not a tribe, not an organism.
Factory,
Well, literally a machine, like a vending machine. You put the coin in, press the button, get the result. And it's a bit like, so that the human side of an organisation and the mechanistic side of an organisation are often in conflict with each other. And they're a bit like the wife and the husband in a marriage. So imagine you've got a husband who's very old-fashioned, very masculine, very, the women should be chained to the kitchen and all of that. And the wife doesn't accept that. So what happens? The man goes to a special man therapist who's probably got cowboy boots and a leather jacket. And he tells the husband, the wife she's a nightmare. Yeah, she's neurotic. She's hysterical. You need to redesign the kitchen and tell her what to do. He says, thank you, therapist. Thank you. And he goes home and he redesigns the kitchen. He starts telling his wife what to do. The wife goes to her own therapist called an organizational psychologist. Whereas the man therapist was a management consultancy. So this is an organizational psychologist.
Okay.
So, and says, look, this husband of mine is just a complete beast. He's emotionally crippled. He can't express himself properly. He doesn't understand anything about emotions, and he thinks he can drive me like a Jeep, and he wonders why I break down. And then the organizational psychologist says, well, we need to address this. We need to change some of the business processes, some of the protocols, some of the ways that things are done. And they never get it right. The pendulum will always swing too far in one direction or the other, because the two mentalities are completely incompatible. Now, when a company says, and I've seen it so many times, they say to me, government ministries have said to me, we need to stop thinking like a government ministry and start thinking like a startup. I go, why? It's because startups get things done, and we need to get things done. Okay, there are 14,000 people in your organization. You're not going to behave like a startup. And even if you are, it's the wrong question to ask, because a startup is just another label for a fictitious make-believe way of living that we think groups have. A startup is still a tribe. A massive corporation is still a tribe. A law firm is still a tribe. An NGO is still a tribe. A government ministry is still a tribe. So instead of saying, so if they say, we've got to start acting like a startup, or we've got to start acting like a corporation, it's a bit like a herd of zebra saying we've got to start behaving like geese. No, behave like zebra, because that's what you are. Don't behave like geese. It won't help you. So any organization needs to start saying, we've got to start acting like a tribe, because that's what we are. We've got to understand how tribes operate. And how tribes operate is counterintuitive if you see a business as a machine. If you see a business as a tribe, then of course it's not counterintuitive, it's perfectly logical. And so you just need to change some of your business processes, some of your ways of doing things, to unleash the tribal potential that's inside the group. Or you can get it wrong, insist on very mechanical ways of doing things and completely kill all the tribal potential, or even worse, turn all the tribal potential against you. I mean, it's bad enough if you've got unmotivated people. That's fairly bad. It's not nearly as bad as if you've got a whole bunch of people who absolutely hate you. If everybody in your organization hates you because you've got everything so wrong, then you're in a far worse position than if they're just indifferent or bored or unmotivated. And if they all really hate you, either you've got a tribe full of complete psychopaths, which is unlikely, or you're getting things really wrong because you're seeing it as being a machine and you think you can run it like a machine. Just grab a screwdriver and screw a little bit tighter and then it'll work properly. And the more problems you get into with your people, the more you react by doubling down on the idea that it's a machine. Give me another screwdriver, I'll tighten another screw. And it gets worse and worse and worse. Most companies are in some part of this cycle, somewhere in part of this cycle. So generally speaking, in business, we don't realize that it's a problem. We just think that's how business works. Or a company will turn around and say, we made 5 million euros profit last year. What are you complaining about? We're great. Well, you could have made 10 million, couldn't you? If you actually behaved like a tribe and not like a machine. You could have made 20 or 30 million, who knows? If you behaved like a tribe and not like a machine. As long as they're making any profit at all, then they say, we're doing fine. We don't need this tribe nonsense. Everybody needs this tribe nonsense because that's how we live already. We just don't realize it. So we're running away from our animal nature. We're running away from the realities of our ancestors, trying to be something else. And we keep running into glass walls and getting pushed back because we are animals.
It reminded me of one international kind of IT company who asked me to make some change management. They had a really toxic environment, really toxic culture, still kind of achieving KPIs and all that stuff. And there was this exactly a moment of reshaping kitchen that when we enter these premises, then they are so beautifully designed, and there are bananas, and there are apples, and there are jacuzzi, and all that stuff. But relationships, everything there is kind of toxic. And when I had individual consultation with the leader, so he had sat in front of me, and just from the first glimpse, I understood that he has so much kind of resistance towards something about processes, all that stuff. I kind of let him go after 5 minutes. I asked him, listen, do you want to change this or that? Just plain simply, just tell me, because I don't want to be aggressive towards you, kind of passively aggressive, just explaining what to do or whatsoever. Maybe I'm not so smart whatsoever. And he honestly said he doesn't believe that, kind of that. And I said, this is good. Let's not fight it out because you need to live through your own processes, right? He was like this masculine guy who is like all this stuff and kind of that. And it's like really interesting about that we are forgetting about these relationships. That the funny thing is like in the tribe who is alive and well, I suppose men should listen to relationships because you cannot escape them, right? In a sense, because ladies are more about relationships because this is their survival mode, right? And guys' status and things are survival mode.
And historically, it was women's value to the tribe came from their hands-on nurturing. Men's value to the tribe came from going out and killing things and bringing them back to eat. It's one of the reasons why women are so able to talk to each other about
all stuff
about nothing, apparently, for us men, for hours on end without getting bored of each other, because they had to, and this sounds like some silly sexist, back in the jungle, men had to be tough, and there's a lot of backlash against that. Fair enough. Although the truth is that in our evolutionary upbringing, we did have very, very specialized roles and very different things that we brought to the table. One of the things that women needed to be able to do was to do nothing very dramatic, because gathering is not very dramatic compared to hunting. And to stay together, not to be alone, because when most of the able-bodied hunting men are no longer around the camping ground and they're out on the hunt somewhere, the women are vulnerable. So they need to stick together. And in fact, there have been researchers have put up video cameras on the hills overlooking an African tribe and sped up the 12 hours of footage into like 1 minute, and you see these patterns of people swarming around. You never, ever see anybody going anywhere alone. No matter how boring or mundane the task is that they're performing, they always go in groups of at least 3 or 4 people. So the women had to stick together for protection, which meant they had to be able to spend hours and hours and hours together doing nothing very dramatic without getting bored of each other. And men on the hunt do very little talking. And the drama comes from the hunting, comes from hunting and being hunted, because hunting is a dangerous activity. They're going off on an expedition together, they're protecting each other, all this kind of stuff. So that's where they get their bond from. By the time they come back from the hunt, they've bonded. They don't need to sit and chat. They don't need to sit and gossip about stuff to socially bond. They've done that on the hunt. The behavior itself created the bonding. So that's one of the reasons why women are so good at emotions, at managing and understanding and having a vocabulary for emotions and discussing them. And we're pretty much illiterate on that side of things. So that's an aspect of how our evolutionary history has shaped who we are today. Now, of course, in the last few decades, we've all been telling each other, you can be anything you want to be, which means that the idea of traditional gender roles is blasphemous now. It's offensive to people. Anyone who says, men are this and women are that, is like, no, don't you do that. No, very naughty, not allowed to do that. Everyone can be anything they want to be. If I want to be a goat, I can be a goat. If I want to be half unicorn, half walrus, I can be half unicorn, half walrus. And that's my reality, and you can't, you can't deny it. Otherwise you're offending me and I'll take you to court. Which is the pendulum swinging too far in the other direction. It's completely natural and normal that it swings too far in these extremes. It's completely natural and normal that people freak out when they've spent their whole lives being told that they can be anything they want to be. And then some middle-aged idiot from London comes along and starts talking about, men and women in the forest. And it's very depressing for them, and it's very offensive for them. It goes against what they've been told. And we need to find a way to resolve this, because nature is nature. We are who we are as a species. We can be idealistic about, I don't accept that we are who we are as a species. I want to be Superman. Or fine, you want to be Superman. Sorry, you're a tribal animal. You're a tribal primate. That's who you are. You're Homo sapiens. And we have to accept this. Otherwise, we're just going to destroy each other.
What if we look at this from find your calling or find your real yourself? So, for example, not to invent yourself, but to find yourself in terms that you are, right? But you have these layers of concepts, layers of fear, layers of social conformity, layers of conformism, all that stuff, all those layers comes to you because, for example, I have told you many times that after 7 or 6 years working as a trainer, I saw these two as core problems. One is I don't know who I am, I don't know my calling. So this is really destructive for everyone, to yourself and others. And second is like the communication with your subconscious. And when people know their calling, all this bullshit kind of disappears because I kind of feel this rush of energy, of happiness. I know my goal, my aim. I feel fulfilled. I don't need those kind of, makeups, all that stuff, what kind of tries to, change my life. Because I want to honor those guys who want to change their sex. Because I know one girl who changed to guy. And I know this is not the kind of imaginary stuff because he found out that he is like he. Okay, but it was like a long process of searching who you are. It's not like, oh yeah, that would be cool, kind of not, So we need to kind of give opportunity to
it's
kids.
People like him who have been served very badly and very poorly by the extremists within the trans lobby.
Okay.
Because people like him are not taken seriously and they're marginalized and they're considered to be just as nutty as the guys who'll put a brick through your window. Some hairy guy with a beard will put a brick through your window because you fail to refer to him as she. Now that's the kind of schmuck that gives genuine trans people a really bad name. And it's completely wrong and unacceptable.
So in this case, again, it goes to this core question, how can we help people as younger age as possible, 10 years old, 15 years old, just to kind of to start to give this skill to analyze yourself, to feel yourself, who you really are. What is your calling in your life? What is meaning? What gives you meaning in your life? Really kind of to get rid of those biases and the trends and all that stuff because in a sense, for example, I'm a man. Okay, I'm a man. So do I feel like a woman? No. Okay. So, and not to kind of judge myself in 5 seconds, just to give myself time. Kind of, this is a skill. But I understand this is skill. So I'm giving, for example, 30 or 50 methods how to understand yourself, who you are. And it takes time sometimes.
It does. One analogy that's quite useful is if you decide to become your own Michelangelo.
Sculptor of your own.
Right. Okay. Because Michelangelo famously said about, I think it was the David sculpture, the statue. He said, I didn't actually create the sculpture. I just removed everything that didn't belong. The sculpture was already inside the stone.
Removed layers.
My job was to remove what didn't belong. And that was the way he saw it. The sculpture was already there. He didn't create anything. So if you say, right, the sculpture of the ideal me is already inside the stone. My job is just to chip away at the stuff that doesn't belong. then that's quite useful because, first of all, you know that it's always inside you and you're just trying to get it. Secondly, what people will do when they're impulsive is they'll throw away the whole block of stone. I don't like this block of stone. It doesn't look beautiful. It doesn't look like Michelangelo's David, so I'm going to throw it away and find another one, which is an extreme and stupid thing to do. Thirdly, the idea that you have to chip away over a long, long period of time at the stuff that doesn't belong to get to the sculpture that has been there all the time, that's latent in the stone, and you're freeing it. The idea that that takes a long time is very good because life is going to bash you around. And if you get the perfect Michelangelo sculpture at the age of 5, it's going to be broken by the time you're 10. If it takes you 30 years to chip away the stuff that doesn't belong, or 40 or 50 years to chip away the stuff that doesn't belong, then the statue is going to start looking more and more right, more and more correct, more and more like it works, like it's meant to be, more and more beautiful, in fact. Then you're going to start becoming much more delicate and refined and skilled with the way you use your little metaphorical, sculpting tools. At the beginning, you're going to be bashing things with a sledgehammer. A few years later, you're going to be using a toothpick to scrape things away. And that's a useful analogy because it serves the idea that you don't have to be perfect instantly. That if you are perfect instantly, the only place you can go there is down. And that a life is a constant work in progress. And as you get older and more experienced, you can start using smaller and more precise and more refined tools.
So therefore, it reminds me that some 2 months ago, I started to give one method in some subconscious language course regarding how to love your communication with yourself. How to love. It's not like one-time action. It's not like for 2 weeks I will be in this online learning course or on this learning process of learning my subconscious language. Yeah. I need to love this. Yeah. So therefore I need to love to climb Mount Everest. I need to love this road. So actually it always comes sometimes for me comes back to Tao, tradition of Tao. So the road itself is a goal. The goal is a road, so it's this process and the end result is the same. And you need to learn how to love the stuff because, for example, in subconscious language courses, usually my big topic for myself as a trainer is how can I help them to sustain this habit, right? Because in terms that you can work with your subconscious, you can kind of change your perception towards something. And when you love this stuff, the potential is immense, really immense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. In Jewish tradition, wine is very valued as a lubricant of all sorts of things. Drunkenness is really frowned upon. Now, what's very interesting about that is that it's expected that each individual will exercise their own restraint in doing what they're expected to do, which is use wine to help enhance the enjoyment of all sorts of things and to help think in some ways, and yet not to have too much, even though it's very tempting to. So this idea of personal discipline, personal restraint, modified and shaped to a large extent by the expectations of the group, is really, really powerful and really valuable. Self-discipline and self-restraint is massively underrated. I'm sure you've heard this insight that it's been proven by various studies that the number one predictor of success in later life is if somebody is able to delay gratification. Yeah. There's that marshmallow test where they put a kid in a room and if you eat the marshmallow now, then you're a naughty boy, and if you don't eat it, then you'll have 2 in 15 minutes. And the ones who don't eat it, they track them and they find out later in life they're successful. And the ones who ate the marshmallow immediately fail in life. That bloody marshmallow, I tell you. I'd sue them if they did me the marshmallow test and I didn't succeed. Anyway, what this idea of wine is good, drunkenness is not, it's very, very similar to that. And in fact, and this is one of my favorite subjects, the subject of the Sabbath, of a rest day every 7 days, is one of the most amazing pieces of spiritual technology that the world has ever had. Because before the Sabbath came along, every day was the same. We were like cattle. Humans were just beasts of burden. And always you're going to go for instant gratification. With the Sabbath, you know
there's no reason to delay.
There's no reason to delay. With the Sabbath, you know that every 7 days, which is not too long, right? It's a regular cycle. Every 7 days, there's this 24 hours when you're not supposed to do any work. You're supposed to chill, be with your loved ones, learn, read. You're not allowed to write. You're allowed to read. You're allowed to argue, debate, discuss, discover, tell jokes, music, all sorts of things like that. No work whatsoever. Even your servants aren't allowed to work. What does that mean? It means that during the week, you've got to plan ahead. Every time you find something nice, you don't eat it straight away. You save it for the Sabbath. You find a nice bottle of wine somewhere, you save it for the Sabbath. You make sure that your best clothes are washed on Thursday and Friday, ready for the Sabbath. You have to anticipate. You have to plan ahead as a community, as a group, as a family, every single week. Just for the sake of having, not because it's going to be a massive celebration or someone's wedding, just so you can have this one day every week where all the stuff you wanted to do, all of the things you thought about the universe and thought about during the week, then you didn't have time to because you were working. This is the time when you're actually supposed to think about all of those things. And the whole community has to plan ahead every single week. So the whole community have this living example, this living model of how to delay gratification in the simplest and most profound ways. And that community then, if they do that every week, they're able individually and collectively to achieve great things. They're able to then go and build a civilization that can put people on the moon.
Do you know, by the way, that 5-day work week became for the first time, I suppose, in the United States, together with Henry Ford, and that was really bizarre that they were doing this together with some kind of Jewish union. Where they connected together Sabbath and Sunday. Mm-hmm. So for Christians it was Sunday, for Jews it was maybe you know better about that, but kind of they were kind of voting for that. And Henry Ford, who is like really strange, not kind of really whatever polarized person, right? He was like agreeing to that, and worker unions were in the very beginning against that, right?
Double Sabbath, buy one get one free.
Okay. Anyway, listen. I just thought about this willpower and the marshmallow experiment. I didn't tell you that, but I suppose there are two shortcuts. I suppose for the shortcuts. One is when I don't recall what was the name of this scientist who created this marshmallow effect from Stanford University. Well, maybe you know his name. Whatever. So he created this very first marshmallow experiment. There were studies about how they succeed in life, and those kids who were able to delay gratification, they were more successful in all range of spectrum. But then, 20 or 30 years later, University of Washington, if I'm correct, maybe I'm mistaken, sorry, and they did a little bit adjusted experiment. So when kids came into the room, they created good atmosphere, trustworthy atmosphere. And all kids improved their ability to delay gratification.
Wonderful.
So that means when you have this kick in of oxytocin instead of cortisol, because this stress hormone comes in, right. So you create this environment when oxytocin is more present, you change personality. This is one thing. And second thing is this subconscious language. So for example, I have had this, I told you about this back pain. I had 5 years, really huge back pain, and I couldn't finish my beach volleyball sessions and couldn't finish lectures actually, right? And so through this, and I needed to practice yoga for 1 hour per day. So it's kind of from 1 to 10, this pain level from 8 to 5. Okay, 1 hour per day, it's like willpower, discipline. Oh, I hate that. Too much, kind of that. Then I started to practice this subconscious language method, and I found solution in 3 days.
Aha, lovely.
Great doctor, great idea, what to do, this or that, and it was like that. And then the second story about that is like I started to hate at some point in my life. I started to hate technologies, and I have no idea what's happened, because when I was like 18, 19 years old, I started to compose stuff on computers. I was working in media. I was directing, cutting, and doing a lot of stuff on computers myself and something like that. I was TV host and I was director, but I loved technologies. I could manage that. Afterwards, I somehow kind of started to hate it. I hated these I don't know, touchscreen telephones and all that stuff. Kind of, I needed to create online shops. Needed to create online courses, and I was struggling with that. And then what I did, actually, this is completely new. Maybe I didn't tell you that. 3 months ago, I started to reprogram myself. I started in my subconscious language methodology. I started to change my attitude towards technologies. And 1 week ago, it was like for the first time in a long time, I was feeling like, wow, I'm good at this. I created new stuff in online, whatever. I just, again, I'm using something like 15 apps right now at my work, and I'm using like ding dang ding dang ding, easy peasy. 3 days ago, for the first time, I went in a code and I changed the code. I have no idea about coding, but I just went in the code and I will find a solution. I will find a solution. I'm good in technology, and it just kind of changed. And you know how I noticed that this problem is kind of not mine? My mother was kind of really kind of lazy regarding the technologies, and suddenly it hit me. She told, I gave her some kind of new plasma TV with a remote control, and she was like, I hate this remote control. This is good. I hate these technologies. These technologies are terrible. Cannot. She passed away, and look at me. I hate technologies. So 2 shortcuts. One is kind of create different environment. And second shortcut is kind of change yourself, your subconscious. And so I'm kind of, I'm enjoying technologies again. It's so kind of, it's shortcutish way.
Yes. Yes. It's really interesting what you said about when they change the environment, then they can delay the gratification. When they give them more nurturing, a more trusting environment, they can delay the gratification more. Candy is a substitute for love for kids. When kids aren't getting enough love, then they want more candy.
And adults as well, actually.
Adults, absolutely right, absolutely. And there are all kinds of adult candy.
And alcohol, by the way, is candy as well.
Adult candy is grown-up candy. Yeah. Now, when we don't have enough of this kind of mother's milk, this metaphorical mother's milk, then we see threats everywhere where there aren't. That affects our thinking. Our thinking is all look for threats, look for threats, look for threats. You know, we program our mental radar to find threats because we feel vulnerable. And we chase after symbols of love, prizes, gold stars, praise from the boss. Any external symbol of love or approval is something we chased after. So our thinking is focused in that direction. So when we try and solve problems, when we try and think about intellectual subjects, the only things we're able to do are to chase after these conclusions. The only thing we can see in a whole mass of data is the stuff that's threatening, so I'll cut it out, and the stuff that I think is going to bring me some kind of symbolic love or some kind of symbolic comfort or safety. And that's what we go for. Because the brain is phenomenally sophisticated in its ability to select things from what we're given. We just don't realize how precisely we program our radar to select the things that it selects. We don't realize it's a choice. It is a choice. We tell the radar what to pick up. So when we need to feel safe, especially in sort of business or in grown-up conversation, very often it's about needing to win, needing to be right, needing to prove the other person wrong, needing to fit in, or needing to stand out, which are opposite. So if somebody needs to fit in, they agree with everything, and they don't want to contradict. If somebody wants to stand out, they'll disagree with everything. These aren't responses to the actual intellectual content of what you're giving them. These are purely emotional responses based on candy. They need some candy from the conversation. The only candy they're going to get from the conversation is by proving you wrong and making you go, oh, maybe I'm wrong. And then then they've got the candy. They feel like they've won. And that's because in their environment growing up and in the environment they have around them currently, there is simply not enough nurturing. There's not enough mother's milk. They need to go out and grab it from somewhere because otherwise they feel like they're going to be, they feel like they're dying.
In subconscious language course, in the very beginning, I tell people, if you don't understand your motives, just try to check everything out through these 2 angles. One is safety, another is love.
Beautiful.
And actually, this is the same. Actually, they are the same.
Yeah.
And when you try to understand why you don't do this or you want to do that, then again, where there is safety for you, where there is love for you. As simple as that, actually. This is kind of basic stuff. Mm-hmm. And when you start to understand that you need to give, for example, leave love to yourself. And therefore, this is kind of, when we talked before that when I have some kind of problems in situations at work or whatever in my personal life, that means I have mismanaged my love to myself. Mm-hmm. Kind of my self-confidence, my love to myself kind of is lacking. So because there are a lot of times when you don't receive this nurturing from outer world. It just happens. There Absolutely. Are cycles and rhythms and something like that. So you need to be aware how to kind of support yourself in a sense and love yourself. Again, this is a skill. This is really a skill. I'm for 15 years, I'm kind of learning how to be better at loving myself. Not to be arrogant, not to be ignorant or something like that, but just to love myself, to be adequate, and to be able to love more and more other people. And so anyways, listen, John, it was again, it was blast. 1 hour and a half. It kind of went like 10 minutes or maybe 11 minutes or something like that. Anyways, usually at the very end of meetings, I ask people, could you name 3 things, just in like a bullet round, 3 things what you would improve or what could improve our ability as a humanity to sustain and go in a good direction?
Parenting. First off, 90% of the world's problems come from bad parenting. Because they come from the need to thump our chests and be right and raise our status and all the rest of it, and that comes from bad parenting.
So for example, it would mean to give some courses, learning crash courses to parents, or maybe at school there are kind of
both on every touch point possible. There was a dolphin trainer, Karen Pryor. She once said that people shouldn't be allowed to have kids until they've learned how to train a chicken. A chicken's the dumbest animal that's trainable, and still you understand the algorithms of behavior shaping. According to her, once you've learned how to train a chicken, then you're able to be a parent. I've heard that one of the biggest reasons for breakups in marriages is disagreement about how to bring up the kids. Because if you don't put up a united front, it doesn't matter which parenting style you have, as long as you both have the same. And if you have different parenting styles, then that turns the kids into, it's horrific for the kids. So they grow up with all sorts of problems and disorders. So bad parenting is the first thing that needs to be resolved.
By the way, big shout out for this king of her book of hers, Don't Shoot a Dog. By the way, yesterday I was in one training session with an NGO, and I was just kind of pushing for this book. Please read this book, because those guys are working with troubled kids from from inequality environment and bad parenting situations. And Don't Shoot a Dog, guys. This is just a wonderful book, especially when you want to learn how to parent, how to guide yourself.
Yep.
If you are a teacher, if you are a parent, and if you want to change your behavior.
Yep.
She has such wonderful stories.
Yes.
Don't Shoot a Dog.
Yes.
Wonderful book. Yeah.
A friend of mine was a psychiatrist, and he claimed to have a patient whose cat kept peeing on the rug. And he asked
This is a wonderful story. Yeah.
He asked Irving, "How do I stop the cat peeing on the rug?" And Irving said, "I don't know. I'm a shrink. I don't deal with animals." And he said, "Oh, come on, doctor. You're very insightful. Come and give me something." So, all right, try shock therapy. Every time he pees on the rug, rub his nose in it, throw him out the kitchen window. So the guy goes home, the cat's peed on the rug, he rubs the cat's nose in it, chucks him out the kitchen window. The second day, the cat pees on the rug, so he rubs the cat's nose in it, chucks him out the kitchen window. Third day, the cat pees on the rug, rubs his own nose in it, and jumps out the window. Now, how many kids are jumping out of windows?
Such a wonderful story.
Because we think we've trained them to do what we want them to do, and actually we train them to do something completely different. So bad parenting.
And this is topic about subconscious. To
Yeah.
learn, because when you work with chicken, it's kind of like the same level of subconscious in a sense. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
So that's the first thing. Second thing is the same principle carried into school, and carried into the workplace, carried into politics, carried into things like social media. The third thing, and this is such a
Sorry, could you expand on this second one? What should be carried in those realms?
an understanding of how behavior is shaped. The same insights that would make people better parents.
Same principles.
Same principles.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Positive reinforcement, creating an atmosphere of psychological safety. Google did a study a few years ago of trying to identify the algorithms of the perfect team, peak performing team. And they thought they were going to find the insight they wanted in the numbers. What sort of age range should people be on the team? Whatever. They thought they'd find some magic formula for how to put together a peak performing team. And they identified after years that the actual magic ingredient of a peak performing team is a quality that they referred to as psychological safety. You feel that you can have a stupid or crazy idea and you won't be ridiculed. You'll be supported by the group. And how many families do we not feel psychologically safe in? How many schools? How many workplaces? Do you think the House of Commons in Britain, do you think the Saima in Latvia is a psychologically safe space for the people who work in it? The UN, is that psychologically safe for the people who work in it? Well, for most of them probably, because it's a glorified shopping trip for most of them. But actually, for the decisions that need to get made, it's not psychologically safe. So we've created an environment for ourselves in pretty much the whole world which is psychologically dangerous, psychologically threatening, emotionally threatening for each other, because we think thumping our chests and being dominant is the way to live. And so we create a very unsafe atmosphere for ourselves. And that then bleeds into the way we talk to each other in public and on things like social media. I don't know what we can do to legislate for that. I don't know. I don't know what we can do. I don't think it's possible to pass laws saying you've got to be polite. I don't think it's possible to pass laws doing that. So that's a tough one, although it needs to be dealt with. We really, really need to raise the level of civility, the level of decency that we have when we talk to each other, especially people we don't know, about subjects that are actually very, very important. If someone tells a joke on Twitter or asks a question about, how is this manufactured? Someone on Twitter will go, I'm a plastic scientist and here's how it was manufactured, and it'll be very useful and very nice, thank you. They won't get death threats. That's not going to happen, right? If I post something on Twitter about Palestine or whatever, I'm going to get and I've got them, I'm going to get a bunch of death threats. I'm going to rip your filthy Zionist heart out of your chest and all of this. And they mean it. They really mean it. If they could, they would. And that's politics. That's an abstract ideological thing. For many people, it's not abstract. But for a couple of people arguing on Twitter, it's kind of abstract. And he's threatening to rip my heart out of my chest. That's not really acceptable.
Are we coming back to this topic of tribe? Because in tribe, you cannot do that, right? So,
exactly.
So this is like the funny thing, though. For example, I'm coming from a decently small town in Latvia, and I moved to Riga actually to get away from the tribe, to be more free in a sense, to find intellectually similar people. Not to be kind of to say that I'm super smart, or just intellectually the same with whom to talk to, kind of that. Because in Valmiera there are a lot of wonderful guys and something like that. But still, the topic is that I maybe wanted to escape the tribe, but just to change the tribe. Mm-hmm. But anyways, we need the tribe, because I saw this wonderful video on I don't know where, with the two dogs barking at each other with like and they were in between them there was this glass door, and they're with each other, and then someone opened the door and one of them just rushed in the other door, was like
yeah, I saw that. It's beautiful.
It's instantly changed, right? So the thing is, again, what is untribish becomes destructive. So this is kind of tribe is like basic stable ground for humanity, when we can say like that. And when we are going away from that, we are kind of becoming destructive. And there will be some people who will say, no, let's the tribe, right? Let's get rid of this. But the thing is, actually, we need that, and we need to understand how to create healthy tribe. When Google, I use sometimes this Google survey about safety, and there comes this word trust. So, and again, I suppose maybe that begins in a school, when we create this environment when
begins at home.
Sorry?
Begins at home.
Begins at home and then in school. But the problem is that school is only institution what governments create in terms of content and in future. You cannot go in an independent family and say, listen, do this or that, right? But school, this is only system on this planet when you can create society, right? Yeah. You can create ideas, you can create environment and habits and all that stuff. So actually, you can
create prejudices and you can create taboos.
Exactly. Yeah. So tribe is destructively created or constructively created at schools, in some sense, right? Yes. And right now at schools we have a sense of meaningfulness, lacking that, laziness. We are pretending that we are doing something. We are pretending that we like that stuff or whatever. So many bad habits are created right now in schools. So actually,
and schools also where we learn to deal with the older generation, where we learn to deal with authority. Or where we don't learn to deal with authority. A school like Eton is very special for a number of reasons. One of the Eton's this very famous...
How many prime ministers from... it's like 50% of prime ministers in England comes from that.
And the others came from Harrow, which is the other great school. Here's one of the... I know a few old Etonians. Here's one of the secrets of how Eton works. You have to call of course you have to call the teachers sir and all of that, and the teachers are very high status, okay, deliberately very high status, quite unpleasantly high status. So if you say, in a normal school, you could say, good morning, sir, and they'll say, morning, Howard, and I might say, how are you today, sir? I might, if I'm feeling a bit cheeky, you might say, very well, thank you, Howard, and he'll walk on. If you say that in Eton, the teacher will turn around and say, do you think it's appropriate to ask me a question like that, young man? And you go, oh, sorry, sir, no. Now, what Eton
It's kind of 19th century or something like that.
Yeah. Now, what Eton teaches you to do is to be completely emotionally okay with the fact that there's some guy who's behaving like really mean and demanding that you give him an appeasement display and call him sir. You learn to deal with that and just doesn't bother you. And so you can call him sir just as easily as I can call you mate in the middle of a conversation in the pub. And you have that reinforced into you day after day after day. And if you've got a point to make in class, you make it, even if the teacher's going to be quite rude to you. And you learn to not be intimidated by that. You learn to still be psychologically comfortable, emotionally comfortable, authentically expressive, while you've got this guy who looks like a judge frowning at you. And that's a very, very, very powerful life skill to have. And a school like Eton beats that into you quite harshly over years. And you come out not realizing that you've learned that. And you go into a job interview and you're completely confident and happy with the CEO of the company, and everybody else who's come for the interview is a little bit kind of a bit nervous and trying to overcompensate because they never went through that shaping experience that you went through. So at school we learn, in a place like Eton, we learn to have a very healthy, psychologically healthy and comfortable and confident relationship with authority. In other schools, we learn to pull a knife on the authority figure if they ask us to do something we don't want to do. There are plenty of schools in Britain where that happens. A school around the corner from where I grew up, the headmaster was stabbed and died in front of his pupils. And there are kids in schools who will do that. And that's what the environment teaches them to do. If you don't like authority, stab it, which is really not healthy. Because then they start throwing bricks and Molotov cocktails in the middle of the street, and then they start deciding, I don't like Hindus, or I don't like Muslims, or I don't like Jews, or I don't like whoever. And they start pulling statues down and telling themselves and telling everybody else that they're saving the world. And it's disgustingly dysfunctional, insanely dysfunctional. And it comes from a whole generation of parents saying, yeah, I don't want to be too harsh on my kids. I don't want to be too disciplinarian. I want to let them do what they want to do. And they turn around and stab a teacher.
Okay, tribe. Again, question about tribe and relationships, right? Because tribe is about relationships.
Of course
right?
it is. Yeah. It's a network of relationships. That's all it is.
Absolutely. By the way, maybe we could ask Arthur to find this dog video right afterwards, and afterwards to finish with this.
It's such a sweet video,
right? It's so nice, and actually, these bubbles on social networks actually are like that.
Yeah.
Right. And the thing is like that when you are kind of starting to play with this habit just to bark on each other, you are becoming one, right?
Yeah,
this
totally.
habit are kind of.
You don't know how to do anything else. I had a Pakistani taxi driver in London who said, I saw a copy of the Quran on the passenger seat, so we started chatting about the Quran and stuff like that. And he said to me at the end of the trip, I stayed for about an extra 5 or 10 minutes in the cab because we were chatting, and he said to me, I should kill you. And I said, well, why don't you? He said, because you are my friend. I was like, well, I'm not. I'm your passenger. I mean, okay,
What an absurd conversation.
So literally, yeah. So he said, my tribal duty is to kill you, and I should do that. And the reason I'm not doing that is because I'm overriding that tribal duty with another priority, which is I have a priority to the tribe of humanity, or I have a priority, I have a priority to my personal social tribe, which I've decided you're now a member of. You're a member of my intimate personal social circle. So my wider tribal loyalty won't come into play, and I won't stab you. So you're safe. I got out of the cab pretty fast after that, in case he changed his mind.
Guys,
but he said it with a completely straight face. It's completely normal. I should stab you right now, purely for ideological tribal reasons, and I won't because I've decided you're my friend.
Oh boy. If we finish on this note, I hope that this is a good note, actually, that there is... So we need to create these new tribes, in a sense, right? New tribal thinking, in a sense, right?
We need to create a universal tribe with the same values, with the same behavioral priorities, the same understanding of why certain behaviors are acceptable and certain ones are not. And certain behaviors are worthy of praise and certain behaviors are worthy of humiliation.
The topic only is about nationalities, about religions, and all that stuff. That, in a sense, it has to be, it has to have place, right? The question is, what values are towards heart, towards trust, towards support, right? What values we can agree upon, right? Kind of that.
Yeah.
Okay, mate. It was such a pleasure to meet you, and as always, it was so nice. And regarding decency, I just wanted to tell this one really nice example. I was London at your place, and I saw this one guy who was on the duty to clean the street, and he walked in front of me, and he passed one really small piece of paper, what was like on asphalt there in Hampstead. And he just turned back and lifted up this small piece of paper and just threw it in a garbage can and just continued his walk. And I was like really in awe, in this sense that he was so responsible with his duties to do his job properly, and I fell in love with this sense of duty, responsibility for a English guy. It was
I love that. See, I see it as he was being a bit selfish. Yeah, he's being a bit selfish. Not in a bad way. It's not in any kind of bad selfishness. If he'd let that piece of paper stay where it was, then in his mind, he's just a bloke walking down the street really slowly with a machine for a little bit of money. That's depressing. Because he picked up that paper, his job had some meaning. He was keeping the streets clean and aesthetic and nice and pleasant. That's worth doing.
So it's good selfish.
Good
this
selfish.
Is healthy selfish.
Sure, healthy selfish.
Absolutely.
He was making his job more meaningful and pleasurable for himself.
And it's good for society.
Absolutely.
So healthy selfishness in this sense is uniquely healthy for everyone.
Totally.
So let this be kind of the common ground of our conversation. So let's be healthy selfish.
Productively selfish.
Yeah, and let's be aware of our true life calling, what we want to do, what we are passionate about, and let's learn subconscious language, kind of that.
And we all know what our calling is from economics. It's ironic people hate capitalism so much. Well, capitalism is all about people giving each other what they want, isn't it? That's what it is. The essence of capitalism is find out what people want, give it to them. And the essence of kind of living a spiritual life is very, very similar. It all comes down to serving other people's needs. Being healthily and productively selfish and helping other people be healthily and productively selfish so we can all experience more pleasure in the world and from each other and for each other than otherwise. Capitalism is just a material way of doing that. We're talking more about social and emotional ways of doing that. It's the same vibe, it's the same energy. Give people what they want, make people happy.
And actually it's like being a healthy body's cell. You're like a cell, right? And when the cells are exchanging information, nutrition, all that stuff, so it's healthy body and you're happy.
Yeah.
Let's be healthy cells.
Yeah.
Okay, mate. Thanks a lot. So this was our podcast, Innovating Humanity, with Jon Howard from London. And we are here in Riga right now, and hope you stay safe and be happy and really, really healthy selfishly. Live your life. Cheers.